Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage Conversations in Healthcare. I'm your host, Marcus Engel, and this is the podcast where we teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. And today I have a guest with me who is James Pinkston, who is an RN and a paramedic. Is that right, James? Do I got all your credentials there right?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Excellent. And James, I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you since we met a couple of years ago at your facility in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And we've been following each other on Facebook, and I always appreciate what you post, and I'm glad to be able to talk to you today.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to talk to you too. Uh, it was a great meeting when we first did meet, a couple of years ago. And like I said, I'm surprised you remembered who I am, but I
I
always follow you.
Well, I remember meeting you at the book table because you quickly put together, after hearing me speak, that the premise of presence that I try to put out there into the world, that is a component of the Buddhist philosophy. I believe I remember you saying this, and something that
Correct.
I've studied for a long time. And I know the connection, but it's not everybody in my audience who immediately catches the philosophical connection. So that is exactly why I remembered meeting you out of the many hundreds of people that I meet at the book table. But thank you for making that connection.
No, thank you. I think as humans, it's one of the true valuable things we can give each other is presence.
Sure.
May not be able to give money or resources, and sometimes all people need is just someone to actively listen to them and show them they care.
Yeah, show them that they care, right? It's this I always say it's not rocket surgery, right? It's just
That's
humans
right.
being human.
Correct.
So
I think we
so
forget sometimes how to do that.
we often forget how to do that because just like all of creatures, we have the monkey mind and it
Yeah,
jumps around and gets distracted. And we've got to come back to that present moment and being aware and attentive um, and just witnessing what's going on.
100%.
Yeah. So take me back a little bit. I always love to talk with nurses who are also medics because my life was very obviously saved by a medic in the field and then nurses in the hospital. So I love that we have that kind of dual connection there. Could you take me back to whatever interested you in the beginning to want to dedicate your life to taking care of other human beings?
Yeah, you know, I've gone to a lot of classes and participated in a lot of things in the hospital, and this question comes up a lot, and especially with new folks. And I've never had like an amazing, this was what caused me to do it story. I was a short order cook for years. I grew up in a family. My grandmother raised me. She cooked in a cafeteria, and I grew up in that environment. And then I grew up, when I got a little older, I cooked, and it just didn't pay that well. So I started looking for something different. So I went to a local community college in Mountain Home, and it was originally kind of set up as a trade school. And the EMT program caught my eye, and it seemed like honestly something I never thought about. But I was always raised in a caregiver environment. My grandmother was a caregiver, always was. I think she would have been an amazing nurse if she would have had the chance to have gone to school to do that. And it just felt like it fit. So I signed up, paid out of my pocket, took the class, and I absolutely loved it. It just seemed like it was right. It was the right thing to do. And I worked as an EMT for years before I got, I guess, the confidence or whatever to sign up for the paramedic program. and I did that, and I worked as a medic for years and loved it. My wife had got her nursing license. She was also a paramedic, worked for the same service, uh, and she said, "You might as well do it. I mean, we're still working. We're not going to change anything." So I did. I did it through. It was a bridge program here offered at ASU MH Mountain Home, and started working as a nurse in cardiac step down, the same place she worked. A lot of opportunity to learn, a lot of critically ill, sick patients. They weren't quite sick enough for the ICU, but they were a little too sick to be on traditional floors. Honestly, took care of a lot of the same patients that I picked up in the ambulance for years, knew several of them. Um, I stepped out of that role as the patient advocate here at the hospital. I did that for about a year. And the gentleman who was a mentor of mine, Gerald Cantrell, he had started this ambulance service in 1973. So he worked for 48 years in this department. And when he retired, I jumped on the opportunity to apply for the job. And I was lucky enough to step into this position. And so now we've got 95 people in our department. We serve 3 counties and surrounding areas. And I keep up my nursing license. I don't really get to use it that much. And as far as the medic, I don't often get to ride on the truck as much as I'd like to. But that's in the long story short, that's how I fell into it.
I always like the progression of people's careers, EMT to medic to nurse to leadership, right? I always like that progression and to see. And you even mentioned Joe, who you said was one of your mentors. Who else mentored you along the way, and what did they teach you? I always like to ask this question of leaders. Who were those who taught you leadership?
Well, as a baseline, I would have to say, of course, that's like I said, I was raised by my grandmother, and she gave me the foundation that I built everything off of: how to talk to people, how to treat people, how to look at life in general. But once I got into this, of course, Gerald was a big part of my life. Stephen Day, he was the paramedic instructor at the college for years. He also worked in the American Heart Association, helped write several books for the American Heart Association. Recently passed away about a year ago. I was greatly missed. Christopher Fry, he was a partner of mine on the ambulance for 5 years. And when you're working with someone side by side for 24, 48 hours, you learn to trust them and you learn to act as one person because you have to. You're pretty much trapped in a box for a day or two. You spend more time with these people and go through more turmoil with them than you do your family. Um, but I learned a tremendous amount from him, especially as a new medic at the time. Of course, I was an EMT, but what he taught me was invaluable. And then, you know, I've never stopped trying to learn how to better myself in that position. So I always read books and audio books and watch podcasts. Simon Sinek was someone that I always looked up to. I mean, there's a lot, and of course, you too. You helped us as healthcare providers see that there's a definite need. I mean, especially specifically in healthcare, to give that little bit of extra time to listen and find that part of yourself that humanistic part of yourself that relates to people.
I would never put myself in the same boat as Simon Sinek, but I appreciate that.
Well, maybe not, but you were a huge inspiration when you came and talked.
Thank you.
You're definitely one of the best speakers we've had. and I'd like to see you come back. I think it'd be great.
I'd love to. I'd love to. And I would encourage any listeners out there, if you want a beautiful place to go, it's Mountain Home, Arkansas. it's
Absolutely.
it's some gorgeous territory down there,
You know,
and
that's a
good
lot of the
people.
patients we see. They've come to this area for vacation for 30, 40 years, and they loved it. So when they retired, this is like the retirement mecca. Um, Everyone comes here for the lakes and rivers and the fishing and the health care, and it's all, you know, close. Nice people.
Yeah, coming from small town America originally myself, I felt very at home when I was in Mountain Home, and to know that the hospital is so quality too was a true treat for me. I get to visit a lot of hospitals all over the country, and it was y'all got a good place there. So
I
one of the
totally agree.
questions that I always ask, go ahead.
No, you're fine.
Well, I was going to ask you one of the questions that I always ask guests, and you know the story. You've heard the story of when Jennifer was there for me on that night of my trauma, and and I always ask my guests to share a story. I ask this question of all of my pre-meds at Notre Dame too, is that's to share a story about a time that someone was there for you or that you were there for someone else. And I have to imagine that with years and years of EMS care and nursing under your belt, that you've got a great variety of stories to choose from.
Yeah, it's odd. You do this long enough, and I feel like I've forgotten more stories than I remember. But unfortunately, I've been with more people than I can count in their last moments. You know, it's just something that we all have to do if you spend any amount of time this line of work. Um, Personally, the person that affected me the most, and like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, was my grandmother. And um, something that I learned from her when my grandfather passed, she was there, both there, and she basically held his hand until he was gone. And that goes back to what you were talking about with presence. I mean, sometimes that's all you can give, right? And it was the same way with her. So when she passed, I couldn't give her anything except my presence, and I stayed with her to the last final days until she finally passed and did the same, held her hand. The one story from my career that stands out with me the most was a young girl that was about the same age as my daughter at the time. Her father was a mechanic. They lived in Gassville, Arkansas, and for whatever reason, he was working on one of the school buses. He had it at his home, and he had been doing mechanic work on it, and like their driveway was kind of a slant. And for some reason, he had stepped out of the picture for just a minute. I think maybe he had actually gone to the front of the bus or was in it. And his daughter, like I said, I think she was about 4 at the time, 3. Little girl. She had walked around the side of the bus, and for whatever reason, the bus rolled backward, and it ran her over. Um, Tire marks from her pelvis all the way up over her shoulder, where it just barely missed her head. So, of course, they immediately called for a truck, and we responded to it as quickly as we could, got there really, really fast. She had what we refer to as an open book pelvic fracture. Your legs are basically splayed, kind of like Flintstone feet. She was still very much conscious. very solemn considering what had happened. Of course, she was in pain, but family immediately threw her to us, got her in the truck, and she knew everything that was going on, and she was just crying for her mom, which like really truly got me because at the same time, all I can think about in the back of my mind is my daughter. Um, as far as doing everything that needed to be done, we did it, and we had called for a flight team, which was airback at the time, and they were within 2 miles from us. So basically, all we had time to do was drive straight to where their base was at and do a hot load onto the helicopter, and but in the meantime, all I could do was just try my best to calm down this child who knew absolutely nothing about what was going on. All she knew was she wanted her mom and she was hurting. So it was a short trip, but it seemed like it took an hour. You know what I mean? It was just like took forever because all you wanted was for her to be okay and not to hurt. So I held her hand just like I would my little girl, and I tried my best to calm her down and talk her through it. And we got her loaded into the helicopter, and of course she went away. Well, I never knew what happened. I never knew. I never followed up. I had no idea because you just can't. You could call these hospitals, and I've learned over the years that because of rights and everything, HIPAA laws, they won't tell you anything. It doesn't matter who you are, which is the way it's supposed to be. They shouldn't. So when I was years later, I'd gotten into the nursing program, and I had finished my nursing school, and I was doing my orientation time at the hospital. And we have what's called a nursing residency program here, which is it's kind of like a follow up to nursing school. And basically, what it is you go through and you learn different parts of the hospital. You shadow different areas of the hospital so you can know exactly what each department does, the struggles that they may have to help you when you become a nurse. You know exactly if you have to make a phone call somewhere in the hospital, you have a better idea of what to expect, right? So one of the one of the nursing instructors that also worked at the hospital had come in and was talking to our group, our cohort, and she was telling this story about her granddaughter, and her granddaughter had gotten in a really bad accident where a bus had almost killed her. And it was like this story is just too close, you know what I mean? So after class was over with, I walked up to her and I said, "Hey, I know you don't know me, and you were telling me a story about your granddaughter." So I went into details with her, and she was just like, "Oh my God, yeah, this was my granddaughter." Um, and it was the first time that I knew anything of it post. Girl's doing great. She was paralyzed, unfortunately, from her waist down. Um, and she was so young when it happened that she learned, honestly, she learned how to use her arms, and she, for the most part, walked on her arms. Um, they made prosthetic legs for her that she could actually walk with, but she didn't like them. And most of the time, she said she would kick them off and she would run with her arms, and that's how she got around. That's just what she was used to. And I haven't heard from them in a year or so, but they sent me pictures and a thank you card, and it was just great to have some kind of like closed loop to that. Um, and I'm sure she doesn't remember me. I hope that she doesn't because I hope she doesn't remember anything about it. And shortly after that, the father actually died in an automobile accident. I don't even think it was months after that. So not only did she suffer a great loss on a personal level for her body, but also lost her father shortly after.
Uh, a tragic story, and maybe not all that uncommon for the kind of things that you and your colleagues witness out there on the truck. What what kind of things do you do? What kind of things do you suggest other medics do to stay connected to that humanity when, as you said, you can't follow up through HIPAA laws or just sheer volume of the amount of patients that you see. What do you do to stay connected to humanity so you don't build up a shell around being able to feel uh, appropriately?
So that's like a double-edged sword. You can't lose your humanity, and you can't lose that feeling. But at the same time, you have to, if you work in EMS, you have to learn to switch things off and on when you need to. So, like, you have to be able to work a call like that and then immediately get turned around. And I mean, sometimes we have no time other than to restock our trucks. Sometimes we even don't do that before we're sent on another call. Not every day is that way, but some days are. So you have to be able to work a call like that and switch that mindset to immediately go pick up a 90-year-old lady that just fell down and needs help picked up. You know what I mean? You've got to be able to put that out of your head and immediately turn on your smile and not let her know that you just worked something horrible. You have to be able to keep that peaceful balance. Over the length of time that EMS has been a thing, which compared to nursing is not long, we've all developed really unhealthy coping mechanisms, probably. I think now is better than it used to be. When I was younger in this game, we didn't really have a lot of resources other than each other, and we really leaned on each other a lot. Uh, we've all been through horrible stuff, and uh, if you're not married to someone or don't have a family that's versed in healthcare like we are, people don't understand, and it's really easy to scare people or turn them off because the stories that we have are not something you share at the dinner table. You know what I mean? So having people close by that you can bounce stories off of and talk about it and get it out is basically all we had. Of course, now our hospital offers services like critical incident stress debriefing, which we do, and we have a lot of really good people that help pull that off. We have a great team, and there's a couple, two or three counselors actually here in town. Lighthouse Resources is one of those, um, and I've spoken with them. We actually did one not too long ago for a horrible situation where a young lady and her children went off the road and went into the lake. None of them survived. I believe there's four. So that was something that we had to set up a stress debriefing not only for our people, but for the fire department and all the resources that were there to help, and our whole entire nursing staff in the emergency department and even the physicians. Uh, Overall, I think we did a stress debriefing for close to 150 people.
Wow.
It was a lot, and especially
Yeah.
for a small town like this. And we really don't, I mean, the majority of our population are elderly, 65 and older, right? We're number one in the state for Medicare, Medicaid reimbursables, fifth in the nation. So if that says anything about our population, we deal with geriatrics, not pediatrics. We are pediatric certified and we're always prepared, but it's not something we really deal with that much. So when we see it, it's not comfortable for us. It stresses us out. So to answer your question, I mean that's lengthy, but we really depend on each other like family. And that's one thing about this place is like that's part of our motto. You know, we treat each other like family. We treat the patients like family. We have to. That's the only way we survive.
When I get to work with first responders, there is a camaraderie and a connection amongst them that, frankly, I'm jealous of. Um, that those of us who are not in that line of work where somebody truly does have to have your back, and your front and your sides and top and bottom.
Mm,
You know, people like me, we it's hard for us to step um, into that type of mindset to understand that type of relationship. And like I said, I'm frankly a little jealous of it, but I'm certainly not jealous of the, as you said, the things that you witness out there on the truck. And I've been fortunate over the last couple of years to work with an organization out of California that I maybe turned you on to too, called First Responders Resiliency Incorporated. And it's a
absolutely.
really great program, especially if you've got any of your people under you that are hurting from the work. So we'll talk more about that later if you'd like. But
I think it's always kind of like the static in the background here. I'm sure there's a lot of calls go unnoticed by me because we just have a high volume and I don't always hear the stories from my crew. Sometimes, sometimes we do, and I know about it. We have, of course, this is a vacation area, so we have the rivers, the lakes. There's curvy, steep roads, so people come from all over the United States to drive motorcycles, crotch rockets. We have a lot of motorcycle accidents in the summer, a lot of traumatic events, and even on the boat accidents, head injuries. There's always something. But that may not be your trigger. That may not be the thing that, I mean, maybe even with the geriatric population, seeing someone reminds you of a family member or anything can trigger someone. Anything
right.
can start that cascade inside your head to doubt and overthink and worry. But no, I would like information about that
Yeah.
if you can share it. Sure.
Yeah, sure. I just anytime I want to keep EMS in the game, I want to keep them in the game, because obviously we rely on EMS to be there when we call.
Well, yeah, it's true. Everyone does, but like you said, just in the same way that you may be jealous of the camaraderie of what a lot of the first responders and people of that nature do. I'm a little bit jealous of what you do as well. I mean, being able to help people on a level like you do, especially with podcasts, so you're not just reaching 90, 95 people like I have here, you're reaching all over the United States and the world, which is amazing.
That's what we're
And if you can
trying to
just
do.
affect one person's life from across the United States, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's something I don't take lightly. To think that I love that. I think it's Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, success is to know that even one life has breathed easier.
Man.
I think you and I can feel that we've had some success. People have breathed easier because of our work. So good
Absolutely.
stuff we're doing. So let me ask you this question as a final here on our episode today. Let's say you've got the world's largest billboard on the world's tallest mountain. What is the message that you want to broadcast to humanity?
Wow. Um, this is a weird one, maybe not appropriate, but
You can
life
have both sides of the billboard if you want.
life's too short. Eat more ice cream. I think we take ourselves too serious. We take the world too serious. We take our jobs too serious. And I'm not saying that like our jobs aren't serious, but at the end of the day, we have to come together as brothers and sisters and love each other. And there's no better way to do that than through humility. Humble yourself. Uh, be open to reach out to people who need the hand.
It's what we get to do.
Yeah. Um, Sometimes it's a little more forced with people. Sometimes people have to make each other, behave in that way. And some people it just comes natural to. Um, and some just don't understand it and need help see.
And I guess that's what we're here to do. Just try to help people.
Yeah, what else is there?
What else is there, right? It's what we get to do as human beings. So, James Pinkston, I cannot thank you enough for spending some time with me today, giving me a little insight into your background and for all the good you do in your world. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for spending some time with me today.
No, absolutely. It was my pleasure. Anytime. I'd love to talk to you more.
Yeah.
Marcus, I appreciate you thinking about me and reaching out to me. It was a shock when I got a message from you. I'm like, Marcus, really? I thought it was so cool. And it's an honor to get to talk with you. I look forward to watching this.
Thank you. Likewise, too. I appreciate your time, appreciate your expertise and all you do. So, and listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of Compassion and Courage Conversations in Healthcare. Please visit marcusengel.com for keynote speaking engagements, hospital and healthcare consulting, books, etc., etc. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time on Compassion and Courage.